Hello, Aeon Soul. I'm Dana, in case we haven't met. And I had promised to post a video about alcohol. And the reason that we're talking about alcohol is because a lot of the tinctures and products that we provide at Aeon Soul are tinctured with alcohol. And the reasoning for that is that by extracting the medicinal value of a plant through alcohol, it is then available sublingually and through the tissues in the mouth to put a few drops in your mouth and hold it there, and then it's absorbable directly into the bloodstream for immediate and effective use. It doesn't have to go through the digestive system. It doesn't have to take a half an hour or an hour to kick in. You get the medicine of the plants pretty much immediately, pretty quickly. A lot of people were concerned about that because either they have been addicted to alcohol or had issues with it, or like as far as metabolism and different things. And so I just wanted to discuss the effects of alcohol on the body, and about a little about how it can be medicinal. In alchemy, and when we're talking about these plant products that we have and the herbs that we're using to help essentially raise our frequency, you have the body of the plant, which reduces to the salts. You have the essential oils. A lot of people have heard of essential oils, which is the soul. So just like you have a body and a soul, you also have a spirit. Well, plants have spirit too, and when it's reduced to simplest forms, you have the salt of the plant, the essential oil of the plant, and then the alcohol or the spirit of a plant. And so in alchemy, what we do is we reduce the plant to its simplest terms, which is the salt, the oil, and the spirit, and then they're recombined without all the extra filler in the way, so that you have a pure, energetic, cohesive product that is able to link, kind of like a puzzle piece, how each puzzle piece has a little spot where it links to the next piece over. If you can take in all of the basic elements of that plant that have been put together in its most simple form, and take all of the additional fillers out of the way, take your digestive system and all of the energy that requires out of the way, then you're able to absorb and connect to the medicine of that plant instantaneously. So in talking about alcohol, like let's say you have your trinity of your body, your soul, and your spirit. A lot of people, when they experience trauma, pain, isolation, you are cut off from your own spirit. And it causes this feeling of disconnect within you. And so at that point in time, sometimes people will consume alcohol or take spirits on board, and then it numbs it. You know, they're going for that numbing feeling, or the more connected feeling. It's like medicine. It makes you better for a little while. When I was 22, I was actually sitting in a bar after work. I was working in a restaurant and sitting in a bar, hanging out with friends. And I don't know, I think I was like having a beer or something. And I just remember I'd had enough alcohol just to kind of feel tipsy a little bit and alter my perception. And I looked up and looked around, and the people around the bar top didn't look the same as they did when I sat down. And every one of them like almost looked like a caricature. Like one looked like a kind of a villainy guy with a waxy, pointy mustache, and then one looked like this like big beefy guy. But these weren't the actual humans themselves. It was like almost like a filter of another thing coming through. And then I realized that the ones that were drinking beer looked the same, and the ones that were drinking whiskey looked the same, like they were coming through the same filter. And I realized what I was actually seeing was the spirit of the alcohol that they were becoming one with or consuming, that was projecting them through them because of the energetic connection that it was having by consuming the alcohol. And so, you know, like that drunk feeling and that I'm not in this state and it feels kind of wobbly, it's because you've taken into your physical body and you've agreed to receive a sacrament or a spirit that has been borrowed from, like, let's say, hops and grain is what beer is brewed or distilled from. And so you're actually borrowing the spirit of that plant in large quantities to achieve a spiritual effect for yourself or a connection to spirit. The only thing is, it's not your genuine connection to spirit. It's one that's borrowed from a plant. So we as humans are designed to be connected in physical, in soul, and in spirit. And when we're disconnected, that disconnection causes a kind of hopelessness. And so, like, our internal barometer just kind of gauges and says, hey, something's not right here. And I'm missing a connection that I don't have. And this is one way that I can find it. And this is all on a subconscious level. All some people really know is that whenever they wake up in the day, until they take on board spirit or alcohol, they don't feel right. And that's where the addiction starts to come in, because you realize that you can borrow that spirit connection from the spirit of the plants through the alcohol, and then it becomes addictive because there's no way to reform that own connection for yourself. And what kind of ends up happening is the same way, like whenever people take testosterone or supplementation that's bioidentical in their body, after a while, your body says, oh, well, I have that coming in from another source. And so your own hormonal system will stop producing your own hormones. And then you become dependent upon bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, and you have to stay on it for the rest of your life. Well, that's kind of what happens whenever you take spirits or alcohol that's borrowed from these various plant sources on board consistently, is that instead of being medicinal, it actually causes you to become dependent on the alcohol for any type of spiritual connection. And so it kind of undermines your own system. And the only way to really re-find that connection and get through that artificial supplementation is like, it's like why some people go to rehab, and it's a very spiritual process of reconnecting with their own spirit self and opening that connection back up and allowing it to flow and come through. And then they find that they're not addicted to the plant spirits to be able to function. So all that being said, like, pretty much since that time when I was 22 and I was at that bar and I had that experience and I saw all, like, these people, it looked like they were wearing masks, I was like, whoa, I'm messing with something here that is not okay for me. And I have never really vibed with alcohol, like, for recreational use again since that time. I totally understand how people could be addicted physically and spiritually to alcohol for those purposes, because spirit connection is huge and it's important, particularly living in a space of duality where you're cycling through light and dark. And if you don't know how to find your own equilibrium in those dark spaces, like, you really need help. And there are all, like, references in all of these religions about how when someone is sick and they're referring to an emotional sickness, give them strong wine, give them spirit, because it really can carry people through dark places when it's used as a sacrament. When you're borrowing the energy of grapes, which are super, like, antioxidant, there's all kinds of medicinal value to grapes. And so, like, people can have an emotional illness or weakness and use wine as a medicine for a certain period of time to get through. The catch is when it becomes habitual and there's no healing on that emotional level. And so then there's dependency that's formed. So, all that being said, we use spirit or alcohol in the production of our products. One is for the immediate absorption into the system. And if there's a trinity of body, soul, and spirit, people are very linear. They move in one direction at a time, but God and universe is very multifaceted, multi-directional. Excuse me. Whenever you are forming connection, whenever you have a plant that you're taking on board and you realize that there is a consciousness, a healing consciousness, a literal life force consciousness. Plants can take energy directly in from the sun and synthesize that without being complicated. So their medicine actually helps us bring ourselves to simplest connectivity to God, which is why a lot of people, once they cut meat out of their diets, they're like gung-ho vegan, and they swear by it, or they feel better, or their systems work better, or they become more spiritual because it helps declog the system. So you want to form a connection to this plant. You want to welcome its medicine and its connection to God into your map, into your blueprint. A vital part of that is the spirit or the alcohol of that plant. We're talking 10 or 20 drops at a time, combined with the soul or the essential oil of, and the salt or the body of the plant. Used appropriately like that, with intention, with awareness, spirit or alcohol is extremely medicinal. And it's not the same as having a tincture of a plant that is prepared in a conscious way that you're taking on board with a certain frequency in mind, versus having, a glass of vodka served to you where these plants were mass distilled and it's marketable, and really it's marked like birthed under the intention of making money and mass production instead of medicinally. Really, it's a whole different ballpark. It's a whole different reason for consuming alcohol. And intention and presence with yourself, like you hear self-love, presence with yourself is the most healing commodity that we have in this 3D space. It's that connection through self that allows spirit of self to come through. And the plants absolutely lend to that raise in vibration, so that's why we use alcohol. That's why there's alcohol content in our tinctures, because it's the spirit of the plant, and it just wouldn't be the same just by isolating the salts or the body or the essential oil, which is the soul. I'm not dogging essential oils at all, because they're amazing, and particularly through the last 20, 30 years on this planet, anytime you have a pure source, you can isolate, to a more simple term, any of the elements of that thing and get good from it. Like, you absolutely can. And essential oils, being the soul of particular plants, are amazing. They carry a frequency that's really, really pure, and they're medicinal. I am just more a user and follower along the lines of where is the more full connection, particularly when I'm taking something on board into my body. I'm fascinated with the connection of the fullness of the connection, like the results of the fullness of the connection. Like, how can this speak to me on a cellular level? How can it minister to my mind and emotions or my soul space? And where does it vibe with me in spirit? Like, why am I taking this on board? What is it going to do for me medicinally? What is it going to do to my frequency? It's just like whenever people are aware of what they're eating, like what you're taking on board. Is what you're eating good for you or not? That's just the awareness that we're creating these tinctures and products with. I have family members and friends who are addicted to consumption of alcohol. And I used to be judgmental about that, because I didn't have it. And so to me, with the experience that I had of seeing the spirits portrayed through people, it was a fearful thing to me. But once I realized that it's just like someone that's on life support, whenever the capacity and capability for life on their own is taken for whatever reason, then there is an intelligence and a capability for them to still be connected to life through support until such a time as they no longer need it. I kind of realized that that's what the alcohol was doing for them, that it was a spirit support. Because until such a time as they're able to be connected through their own spirit to source and allow that to become a healthy thing, then that's what they were kind of doing, is like kind of being on a type of spiritual life support. And people who are in that space don't need to be judged and don't need, like, if you're dying, you don't need someone to make fun of you for dying. Like, if someone's on spiritual, like, spirit support, the last thing they need is to be judged or criticized. You know, those people, if any, need love the most, because there's a certain disconnected element that a borrowed spirit is serving for them, that, if anything, when you're in your own presence and your own frequency, you can lend love to those spaces just by being present with them and not being judgmental. Anyway, it touched a spot for me, and I had a couple of people asking, like, well, do you have non-alcoholic versions of these tinctures? And immediately, just what kind of came to mind is, the alcoholic is a bad word because it is kind of referenced along the lines of alcoholism, and that's not what these remedies and plant medicines are about. And so I just wanted to share that. And does it vibe with you? What do you think about that? We would love feedback. Comments are welcome. Byron and I are here at any given time. It might take us, you know, if you're coming from the States, like, it's nighttime here, and so it might take a little while for a response. But any questions you ever have are welcome, and we're really enjoying building this business and networking and branching out to everyone. And so we'd love for you to stay tuned with the things that we're coming up with over the next few weeks, because we've got some exciting stuff coming up. And thank you for your love and support. Blessings. See you soon.